Wellington Regional Waste Management Minimisation Plan Joint Committee, tēnei rā. So if you'd just like to join me for the karakia, that would be wonderful. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ke uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei mauri ora. A very warm welcome to colleagues from the committee and to all staff today. I hope everyone's keeping warm as we finally hit winter. We might have morning tea at 10:30, but hopefully we're nearly done our business by then. It's a reasonably short agenda. Whakatako tā koto ana o e te mōtini. So I'm going to move that we accept apologies from Councillor Paulina and Councillor Halliday for lateness. Can I have a seconder for those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Hayward. So if you could all just now raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. Ko mana. So that's carried. Thank you very much. Now, conflicts of interest today? No. Okay. And then e whakata koto ana o e te mōtini. I'm going to move the motion that we accept the minutes from the last meeting. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. E nai nei ka pōtitia te mōtini. I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Hands up again. Okay, so ko mana, that is carried. No items not on the agenda and no public participation. So now I'm going to invite the officers just to introduce the paper, make any comments that they might feel is necessary. We've obviously all read the paper, and then I'll open up to councillors for questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Diljinder Singopal. I'm the Zero Waste Strategy Manager at Wellington City Council, co-chair of the steering group. Apologies from Nigel, who's the other chair. He's keeping unwell today. I would like to start with a couple of things that have happened over the last 2 weeks. And the first thing is a huge thanks to the Joint Committee. We've had some stable support from the Joint Committee on the waste minimization cause, and that has come through the long-term plan process. We've had some very tricky projects and conversations that the LTP has had, and in the end, the projects like organics and collections, thanks to the councillors who've been working on the LTP process, you have carried them forward, and the decisions have been in our favor. So thank you for that. If the decisions were not going to be in our favor, this WMMP would have needed to look very different with regards to the next 3 years of implementation. So that was one thing. The other thing is, while we were all busy with the WMMP and the long-term plan process, there was another crowd that was putting their minds together to understand the application of the waste levy, which is Ministry for Environment. On 31st of May 2024, which is just 10 days ago, they announced the increase of the levy again for the next 3 years by $5 each year, which is by end of 27, it'll reach up to $75. That was a new development. And also what they announced was how the levy would be applied. It would be applied to a variety of projects that waste touches. So the definition of that is still to come. Our understanding is that it would have a wider application with regards to waste and even touching things like biodiversity. We don't know what that application is going to look like, but we wait and see. Now, those two developments have a lot of impact on today's conversation with regards to the context of today. We were going to present to you a full implementation plan today. What we are requesting you is to be a bit flexible about the implementation plan. What we have for you today in the paper that you see is a list of agreed projects based on the decisions that got made around organic collections, because that alone covers about 60 to 70% of households for the Wellington region. We will bring you back a prioritization model, a prioritization matrix, and reporting and monitoring protocol and methodology. That's something that we need to now do with regards to scoping of the projects, allocating budgets to the projects that have been approved, understanding MFE direction with regards to the application of the levy, and also creating certainty around the fact that which council is going to lead which project, i.e. accountability and ownership of these projects. So that's me in terms of opening. If there are any other members from, with regards to the officers who want to supplement my commentary, please do so. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to you, Chair.
Okay, no comments. Right, thank you for that. So colleagues, I'm just wondering if we break up the questioning a little bit. Does anyone, just to talk about, first of all, the process and what MFE is doing, then the regional and then the local. Has anyone got any questions about the process by which we are going to agree this? Deputy Mayor Swales and then Councillor Mitchell.
I just want to say that I'm a little bit disappointed with this agenda, because after the workshop that we did in Hutt City Council, I was under the impression that we were going to have a little bit more rigour around you know, what was the point of us going through and telling the officers the priority of the projects when we're redoing that again? We did that. We gave the officers a steer, and I was expecting that this agenda would have a little bit more about what those projects were, the ones that needed a little bit more scope, and where we go. I just see us wasting an awful lot of time with regard to what we have to do, because already, you know, this is a 6-year project, and we're chewing up time. So why has the agenda been changed from what was agreed at the workshop?
Chris will take that question.
Good morning. It's a fair question, and what you've asked for is an implementation plan. You don't have one, so we need to develop one. Exactly. But what was tabled was not an implementation plan. So it's important that we actually take the time to scope it up, look at the available budget, prioritise it, and bring something back that's deliverable. Because at the moment, we don't have one.
Can I ask who's talking?
Right.
If everyone could identify themselves in their role, thanks.
So Chris Matthews.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chris Matthews, Manager of Wastewater and Resilience at Wellington City Council.
So who pulled or who directed the, sorry, a subsequent question, if that's all right?
Yes, of course.
So who decided to change the direction, and why were we not informed? Because we all got an email out telling us, you know, we got the paperwork from the workshop that was used, and then we got a matrix or a draft regional implementation plan. And the email talked about what I thought was going to be in the content of this agenda.
Okay, well, what I did is I looked at the implementation plan, and I didn't think it was at a high enough standard to put in front of councillors. So what I'm trying to provide to you, and what I think this group needs to provide to you, is an implementation plan that's actually measurable, something we can hold ourselves to account, that's been scoped, that you can say, well, this is what we've agreed, this is how it's going to be delivered, this is what it's going to cost, this is who's doing what, and then hold us to account. Because at the moment, what was going up, you could not have held us to account. And that's not the type of business I like to operate in. So I'd like to agree on a robust implementation plan, present it to you, and then we can report against it.
So you made a unilateral decision without consulting the other 7 TAs?
No, I did. I provided some feedback to my waste strategy manager, Dill, who is then, as I understand it, spoke to some of the other territory authorities. I think what's more important is the quality of the implementation plan. That's the outcome that we need to work towards, having something that is measurable. Because at the moment we don't have that, and what we're proposing to do is to take the time to properly scope up the projects and to come back with what is deliverable.
I totally agree with you there, but if the change of direction was agreed upon with officers, it would have been nice to have let the elected people know. I'm really disappointed in the comms that went around this, and I need it to be noted that I am really, not happy with the way this had, because you're almost asking us to reprioritise the high priority that we gave at that workshop. So what was the point?
I wasn't at the
We
workshop,
gave you a list, yeah.
Okay. I don't know what that prioritisation list was made up of. I don't know what dimensions were used to prioritise at the workshop. I wasn't at the workshop.
So can I just, look, I think it's clear that there is some concern, and so I think that's noted, and we need to move forward. Can I just check with staff that you have got the time and resources, just bearing in mind that we have had the LTP as well, and I know quite a lot of staff have been involved in that.
How? Fucking kidding me.
Who wants to take that question? And essentially who's going to be accountable for delivering it on time? And is it possible to deliver it sooner?
I can only, this is Ewan speaking, Head of Climate and Waste in Hutt City. I can only speak for Hutt City. So we've allocated resources at our end to deliver on a wide range of all our local actions, and we're still in the process of resourcing up for that. In terms of the regional actions, the implementation plan clearly was about figuring out where the priorities would be. It's fair to say that I don't think we were necessarily in a position to say, hand on heart, for every project, this is the amount of resources we need and all the money we need. But it was about a high-level direction of, okay, well, here's our priorities, and then we need to buckle down and actually figure out the detail. In terms of Hutt City Council's resourcing, I'm pretty comfortable that we would be able to deliver on the high-level direction, but obviously with the caveat that some of the detailed project planning is yet to be done. And that's fair enough, because we couldn't have done that without some high-level direction in the first place. So from a Hutt City perspective, I'm not particularly worried, but I understand that some of the concerns around presenting a plan that might not be measurable or deliverable at that point.
Yeah, so I guess just what the committee is expecting is that there will be a robust implementation plan, and that you will let us know if you need resources or if there are any problems, right? Because it's, yeah. Okay, Councillor Mitchell, sorry, and then Councillor Hayward.
My question's on a different topic, Chair, about the MFE announcements. I'm happy to wait for you to come back to me.
Yeah, I do want to ask about MFE too. So should we just finish the process stuff and then, yeah, thank you. Councillor Hayward?
Thank you. My questions are process related, but I'm glad someone has talked about MFE, so that's good. I guess not wanting to stomp over land that DMS Wales has already touched on, perhaps in terms of process, would it have been perhaps more useful for officers to have recommended that we postponed this meeting if they were waiting for providing a more robust document for councillors to be able to communicate tangible progress or tangible timeframes. Was that ever considered as part of the process?
Well, I'm not sure if you want to postpone the entire meeting for this one part. That's probably a question for governors. But could we have just maybe, postponed this? Yeah, absolutely.
The second, I have a couple of subs via Upoko, if you'll indulge me. The first is just, I know that, we are, as elected representatives, used to the idea that chairs will engage with the relevant officers in the lead up to these meetings to ensure that they are satisfied that the agenda is meeting the expectations of the committee in general. So I guess if I have concerns, it's about making sure that that process is robust as well. Could I get some commentary from officers about making sure that that is an area of focus just to tidy up in terms of future process?
Yeah, well, I'm probably the best person to take that. Look, I have a view that there's no point in any officer for any council bringing a paper that's not ready. It just would have been ripped apart. So that wasn't going to get us anywhere. And I still think there was a point in meeting because we still need to look at the progress on the local actions. But look, the feedback is taken on board. I maybe had made some assumptions that things were moving along smoothly. They weren't, and now that will be more closely monitored. And I did, as you know, have a conversation with a few of you that over the weekend just to about some of the issues, but just particularly given we've just still got to get through our LTP processes too by the end of the month. But look, all heard, and I think maybe part of the feedback just has to be quite focused on what the critical actions are that the officers need to work on, because when I took another look at the action list, for me, some of these are sequential. Like, you don't need to do the education before you've got the infrastructure in place, for example. That's just my view.
One last question,
yeah, sure.
And it's just, this may seem more substantive, but I just want to get clarity around the supporting notes that came with the tables in regards to points 26 through 30 in terms of next actions. And again, this kind of sits back in the point about the usefulness of us and our meetings and making sure that our agendas are fit for purpose. Do we have any additional clarity on what those timeframes of coming back to us are about, as has been already alluded to by officers, with regards to a far more comprehensive document detailing the prioritisation and the logistical support to implement these measures?
Do you want to take that one?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor. Our timelines now look like this, that we will start scoping the projects. We'll look at the 23 projects that we have in front of us, put them through a prioritization matrix, look at what budget is available, understand the ownership and accountability side of things. We'll bring that back to you with regards to a reporting and monitoring framework as well by September, and then a full implementation plan. Once you give us the okay on the reporting and monitoring and the prioritization of these 23 projects, we will go and then finalize the implementation plan and bring it back to you in the next 2 to 3 months after that, which will be by December. If we need to look at bringing that time forward, officers can look at it. I personally think we can bring the time forward from December to give you a full implementation plan. That definitely is an option.
So can I just ask maybe the committee, generally I wouldn't go and look at papers before they come, because it is supposed to be officer advice, but would you like to have maybe an email update about where the officers are at with the implementation plan before September? Would that be helpful?
I can answer to that question,
Yep.
Whaupoko. I think so long as it's achievable within the resources from each of the TAs. I certainly don't think that if the final question I had, which may actually help answer your partai, is do officers feel confident that they have received enough information from elected representatives with regards to their feedback and the direction of travel that they're looking to see in terms of future details? I don't want us to have workshops for the sake of workshops, nor do I want to have meetings for the sake of meetings.
Indeed. Enough direction?
We have enough direction, I believe. What in terms of sequence has happened over the last 2 months? We had a workshop with the Joint Committee members, but the decision making on certain projects due to LTP came after that. So with the information, if I take an example of critical projects like organics and collections, as I did mention earlier, if those projects were not going ahead, then we would have to revise this list of projects anyways. Those projects would have to then be at the tail end of this WMMP after 27-28. So there was going to be an element of reprioritization after the decision making, which came after the information sharing session that we had.
Colleagues, do you want any more feedback from officers before September? Does anyone have a view?
I think from the workshop, Chair, we did say that it would be nice to have progress reports, and it's not about, it's just kind of verifying that we're on track. I'm very aware that this is a 6-year plan, and if we don't get anything back until December 2024, how many years does that leave of this plan to implement? So I'm cautious, and this is why at the workshop we prioritised the projects that we thought we could achieve in that timeline, and maybe a timeline sent through from the officers to the elected people saying, we've got the timeline of when we consulted on the waste minimisation, we got the timeline of all of that, but actually we want a timeline of the projects and when we think they're going to be implemented would be a lot more helpful, I believe, to us. And that can come to us. It doesn't have to come in a workshop or a meeting. It's just an update, because I believe we have weekly meetings with our officers and then fortnightly meetings. Surely something could come out of that to keep us in the loop.
Okay, does that sound possible? So what form would that take, that update, Chris?
Could we just, I suppose it would help that officers have some time to talk about this, so we can do that this week and then provide some options later in the week about what that might look like. But
okay.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay to you, colleagues? Yeah, okay. Right, thank you for that. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did have a question or two around the announcement from the Ministry. And the first one was about the change in what the levy can be applied to. And my understanding, certainly just looking now at their press release about it, that it says there, in addition to investments in waste recycling and recovery infrastructure, the central government portion of the waste levy can now fund a broader range of environmental outcomes. Is that limited to the central government portion? Is that your understanding, Dill?
No, I think I'll pass over to you, Ian. I think it would be applied to the TAs as well. We would be able to use that funding to apply to what the central government direction is going forward, but we don't know what those wider environmental outcomes are yet.
Ewan, Head of Climate and Waste at Hutt City. Just to supplementary to Dill, so the press release was pretty vague on this, and at the moment it sounds like it's only central government, but we haven't actually seen the detail yet, so it may or may not apply to councils. And also, as a follow-up, if it was a wider scope, it's still unclear what that actually means, like what sort of projects or activities beyond waste minimisation would actually be eligible. So I think there's quite a bit of detailed work still to come through.
Thank you. And then my other question alongside this is the minister has also signalled that the government will take another look at organic collections and processing, certainly in terms of timeframes, if nothing else. But I just wondered, in terms of our, there is an action in our plan to act as advocates and lobby the government, whether as a committee we wanted to approach the minister about that, about the timeliness of certainly allowing councils who want to get on with it to get on with it with funding and support there. And part of it for me is, there's a cost to delaying things further, a real cost to our ratepayers in terms of ETS emissions and filling our landfills faster, whether that's a topic that we could take up with the minister early on. I mean, the changes to the levy that they made last week or the week before, I think, went through without any public consultation. So I wonder if we should front foot the organics part of it and get in front of them and say we've committed in our long-term plans, but also our residents. I mean, in Lower Hutt, we consulted directly on it, and the majority of people actually opposed us investing in it. I'm not sure they understood that it's a requirement of the government, but to them it was just another cost for waste. But yeah, pushing the case that there's a cost to not doing it actually, and that we need that cost considered as well. I don't know, just a thought, Chair.
That's helpful. Can I just clarify with you, in your case, are your costs going down for most of your residents as a result of the changes?
Our costs for waste collection.
So in other words, in Wellington City, we sell it because people's costs will go down with the new system? Not for most people, except for the people who are...
I mean, in terms of our curbside collections, it's another bin with another cost. Your cost would only go down if you already had a green waste collection service. And some of our residents do. We have an optional green waste collection, and it doesn't include food at this point in time. I think it would roughly be cost neutral for those people, but for people who don't have green waste collection, like me, it's an additional cost.
Okay.
You can probably speak to that too.
Yeah, would you like to?
I can just provide a bit more detail on this. So in terms of Wellington and Porirua, because you are currently operating a system where most people have a private bin, by consolidating this and moving to a rates-funded system, you can effectively realise economies of scale, and you will find, even with the introduction of a FOGO bin, the total cost per household will actually go down on average. There might be some households where costs go up, particularly where they're very small households, for example, because they might have used, say, a rubbish bag once every 6 weeks. And so therefore, if they now have to pay for the bin through rates, then their costs will go up. But on average, for the average household, the cost savings are quite significant. For Lower Hutt, because we made that change to a rates-funded rubbish bin 2.5 years ago, we've already banked the savings in inverted commas. So any change we do now means we increase costs. So that's kind of a little learning as well, that when you make these big changes, and hindsight is always it's a great thing. In hindsight, it probably would have been better for Lower Hutt to look at the FOGO rollout as part of our last change, because then we could have wrapped it up in the wider change. But now, because we've realised that, anything we change now is additional.
That is an incredibly helpful clarification, because it was a very powerful argument. And Jeff, going back to your can I sell it in the Cosy Club, if you're saving people money, then most people will not have so many objections. Right, Andy, did you have some more questions or points?
That's it for now, Chair.
Yep, and sorry, that is an absolutely relevant point. So, Deputy Mayor Swales, just about... We could write a letter on behalf of the Regional Waste Committee, but I just didn't want to step on the toes of the mayors. So I can follow up with you offline.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, okay, great. Now, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Kia ora no. Just to follow up, that the comments just made previously, certainly the reflection from the Porirua perspective around changes to curbside and organic was that the feedback from the community was on on balance in support, which was encouraging. There's one thing that doesn't get talked about as well in this corridor, which is that contamination of the existing bin network we have for recycling renders 20% of our efforts as a city ineffective. It ends up in landfill anyway. So the changes aren't just about saving money in terms of household costs. It's also about saving money for the ratepayers as well in terms of the bulk costs as well. I'm disheartened that people can't see the forest for the trees with regards to the fiscal impact of this. It's actually, I find it to be actually a relatively easy sell. The problem, obviously, for any council that has a landfill that it operates, is that it is obviously a revenue generator, and you're trying to wean yourself off this addiction of using landfill as a moneymaker when it actually isn't helping reach our goals. I did have a question which was in regards to the MFE announcements, and it's that, can we also seek to get clarity from MFE around how nimble applications can be from either councils endorsing or working in collaboration with community around smaller projects with regards to organics collection and processing? The big gain here, obviously, is building those economies of scale across the city with the household collection network. But I don't also, and this came through with the submissions we had with our regional plan, that we don't want to lose the or disempower communities who are already trying or are wanting to develop their own community-based organic processing, organic collection and diversion process.
Thank you, Councillor. I can start with answering this with regards to what Wellington City is doing, working with MFE on the process of seeking funding. Some of the details I cannot get into with regards to the amount of funding and whatnot. MFE have had a couple of grants that they provide to the community through the councils, and also they are open to the industry. One is the Waste Minimisation Fund, and the other one was the Climate Emergency Response Fund. The Climate Emergency Response Fund is to be axed very soon, and the funds are to be rediverted into the other fund. They have been, I can't speak for MFE, but from observations, what I've seen is they have been pretty open working with the industry, but also smaller community operators to fund composting and some other smaller initiatives as well. So I think MFE has been very open. I don't know what the landscape is going to look like going forward, but if there is an opportunity for the Joint Committee to lobby MFE with regards to that, I think that could be an option too.
Thank you. Can I just ask about the level of the waste levy? I can't remember if it was through our council or through the Joint Committee, but at some point $90 was seen as being the start of the game changer. So at $75 or $70, is that enough to move the dial?
The waste disposal levy, if we look at it from July 2021, where it was $20 or $30 to start with, by the end of 27, it'll reach up to $75. So in a matter of 6 years, it's going to go up probably close to 200% increase. The relevance of that is that the system driven by the ministry is increasing the cost of business, of disposal. That cost of business has an impact on cost to customer. And that is what council is trying to minimize with regards to a system change. If Wellington City and some of the other councils have already done this with respect to HUT, if we do not intervene in the system, those costs would exponentially go up for the customer with the increase in the levy that is already being planned up to $75 in the next 3 years.
Thank you. Right. Yes, sorry, Ewan.
Said a couple of things. just looking at a couple of waste streams, because you asked the question of, when would it shift the dial? I think we're still quite a long way away from actually shifting the dial in terms of the economic incentives, and for a couple of reasons. Looking at contaminated soil, because we are just talking to a provider about potentially establishing a soil remediation plant, and one of the figures that I've heard talked about is something like $500 a tonne. Before this sort of technology actually becomes cost effective. Now, you can get there by either landfill prices going up to that sort of level, or if you don't have a landfill, then obviously your transport costs start to drive that sort of cost picture. So given that, looking at the 3 landfills in our region, special waste, contaminated waste prices are around about the $300 mark, so we're actually still some way away from that. Another really problematic waste stream is treated wood, for example. There is nothing you can do with this at the moment other than co-incineration. And the plant to do that in is somewhere in Northland. So that, the actual cost to get it up there to co-incinerate it is significant in comparison to just conventional landfilling. So that's just a couple of waste streams, and they are problematic ones, but it does give you a bit of an idea on, the cost is only part of the picture. Transport cost is another, or whether or not you actually have a landfill available. And if you don't have one, Canterbury, for example, landfill prices are a good $100 a tonne or higher already compared to our region for various reasons. And that starts to drive, maybe it's no coincidence that the soil remediation plant they are building down there is in Canterbury.
That's incredibly helpful. And again, obviously politically, even the levy going up to 75 might get a bit of pushback. Right, so, yeah, but okay, no, that is helpful, because obviously we want the economics to change. As you say, Jeff, we rely a lot on landfill dumping, which isn't helpful. Okay, are there any more questions on process or MFE? And then I just thought we could just quickly look at the regional stuff, and then I did want to talk about the local actions, because I had some questions there. Nothing more? Okay. Yeah, so if we go to the regional plan, so I've got page 15. Are there any points of clarification or concern that people would like to raise there? So is that Quentin? Was that you raising your hand? No. So I guess, I think I've said it to a couple of you over the weekend. My kind of, just thinking going on is that a lot of this is sequential, right? Until we have options for people to dispose of their waste, we can't really tell them to reduce their waste. So for me, it is about infrastructure. And I just wondered, like I was just saying to someone, one of my neighbours, apparently in some European country, they've got about 7 bins. So, we've still got a way to go there. So is that would that seem sensible to officers and the committee? Because I look at some things like reviewing bylaws and all that sort of stuff, and I'm just not sure that would be the biggest priority.
I think this comes back to the previous conversation around the robustness of the material that comes from officers. My expectation is that the next documentation that comes to us actually does clearly communicate what are the priorities, and that and the feedback, the comment you just made was, I thought, well canvassed in the workshop around our feedback about the priorities of it. Notwithstanding the fact that I also expect that the matrix that's used will also not only give priorities, but will also be able to assist from a regional perspective where councils are collaborating, or where councils where there's parts, there's slippage that we're not aware of due to one TA not being able to get on top of one thing or another. So I think that's why I'm not so precious, for lack of a better word, about this table right now, but I am expecting, and I think officers have got the message, that the next document will.
Yep. Okay. So is there anything else that anyone wants to say about the table? So Kyle. Oh, sorry.
Through you, Chair.
Apologies. Sorry, your name didn't come up.
That's okay. So with regard to the spreadsheet that we got sent out, we identified a number of high priorities, which is about 8 of them, which I think we need to actually focus on. And whilst all of those high priorities have got complex beside them, I think we need to actually tackle them, and it will give us a good sense of what's achievable in this 6-year plan, knowing that we don't have an awful lot of work left. But those ones that we identified as high in the workshop actually align with the regional waste minimisation plan in a number of different ways when you look at the objectives and the targets that we will meet. So I'm just referring back to the document that got sent out, and I would like to think that the officers would work on those.
Okay. Yep. Dill?
The draft regional project list that is in front of you, it's not prioritized at the moment. It's a list of 23 projects. It could very well be that number 20 could be on top once we go through the prioritization matrix. So it is something that we will embark on very soon to provide you with a list of prioritized projects, and they could be 6 or 8 councillor swales as the number that you pointed out, but it is something that we need to start doing now.
Okay, I think
so through you, Chair, just through you, so that the email that we got with the workshop papers of the workshop agenda that was focused, and we got a plan, a draft regional implementation plan. Are you from May 2024? Are you saying that that's scrapped now, Dill? Because that's the one that I've got in front of me.
Not scrapped, councillor. We are going to use it to inform our next phase of thinking with regards to robust prioritization. I think, as Chris pointed out earlier, that the implementation plan that we were going to present to you that needed work with regards to ownership, accountability, budgeting, and which council is going to put how many resources towards these projects. So that's going to come in the next 2 months.
Just to follow up, I just thought that, when I look at the 9, the 13, the 14, 16, 21, 22 and 23 projects, that was our steer as elected people for officers to go away and for them to talk amongst themselves as to which council will take the lead on them, and that we'd already done that. So I just want clarity that that's going to be all scrapped and officers are going to come back to us with a priority list.
Yes, it is something that we will do, to come back to you with a prioritized list of projects.
But you'll take, but taking councillor feedback on board.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Given we had a workshop. Anything else, Helen?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
But look, I will make that a priority just to talk to the team once they've had a chat to look at how you're going to have the progress reported on. Okay, anything else on that regional plan? And then we'll go to the local actions. Okay. Now, can I just start off on the local actions? First of all, it's good to have an update, so thank you for that. What would help me, though, is if we could just make it clear what's BAU and has been done already. It was just a bit sometimes... like it looked like this is stuff we're doing and we've been doing for a long time. And so that would be the first thing. Now, it's a shame Martin had to go. My next question was, in terms of Kapiti, they look like they were sort of waiting for MFE direction. Do you know if that's why that is? Have you had talk with officers?
I'm not sure. I can't speak.
Sorry, I can answer that one.
Oh,
Sorry.
great. Thank you.
Sorry, Martin's had to take off for a funeral.
Yes, yes.
But on that note, so through the LTP, we did put in a bid for curbside collections as proposed by MFE. As the legislation hasn't been passed completely, it was removed. So for us here, I mean, if the Waste Minimisation Act does get updated and passed soon, we will respond accordingly to whatever our statutory requirements are. But for this LTP, for us, there wasn't enough of a mandate to go ahead. So that was a decision made by SLT and the auditors.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't a political decision?
No, it hasn't been in front of council yet.
Sorry, but presumably you've passed your LTP and you'll be finalising it at the end of June?
Yes, yeah. So at this stage there's nothing curbside in there. Still, we have talked about what we will do. Even if it's in the next few months that this legislation does get passed, then we will have to prioritise that and figure out how we do that. But at this stage, there's no allocation in the LTP for curbside, but we will respond when that mandate is locked in.
So you'll do a variation on your LTP?
Yep, or an annual plan, or depending on the time frames, as it said, as I think Councillor Mitchell pointed out, that it mentioned re-looking at the time frames for organics collections. So if they take 3 years to do this, then presumably we'd probably get another couple of years to lock it in. Or if we are going to follow through with that, then we would probably apply for an extension. But at this stage, unfortunately, I did try, but it was decided that without the legislation being 100% passed, that we weren't able to put that in this LTP.
Okay, so look, I appreciate you're an officer, but it would be great if Kapiti, can come on board, because we're not leaders in this area of organics in the country. Yeah. Okay, and Upper Hutt might be able to help me here. There were just quite a lot of gaps in the progress update. Is it just sort of, you just sort of provided a response on what you were working on? Is that kind of the way you looked at the table?
Yeah, Richard Scudden up at City Council. Yeah, that's correct. I've just provided an update on projects that are currently in action.
Okay. And so just generally in terms of reporting, it would be helpful for just to get a bit more detail about when people are going to start the work, because there was quite a lot of, what was kind of the word, to be initiated or in the planning stages. So it would just be good if the steering group could look at that.
We haven't finished our prioritisation of our local implementation plans yet, and I'm not sure if any other councils have yet either, so I've only provided an update on what we currently have implemented.
Okay. Yeah, so it'd just be good if maybe there was just a little bit more detail in those. My end, yeah.
Chair, can I add to what our officer has said? We will be merging our sustainability work along with our waste minimisation, and under our sustainability work, something that did miss the report, but we will be doing a public release, is that we've given 50k to Arrow Uniforms to support their fabric recycling, and we've also given 50k to Hutt Concrete, which are looking at recycling concrete, which is a great initiative for reducing their carbon emissions. So that's two projects that should be put in there under our local plan. Thanks.
Excellent. Good. So, and just my last question for now, have we got anyone from the Wairarapa? Rebecca? Yeah, I don't know if you've got an officer with you. There was just quite a lot of stuff around, what have you funded in your LTP?
Well, we don't have an LTP. We have done an enhanced annual plan this year, which in some ways has been fantastic, but it means that we're able to really, when we do an LTP next year, we'll be able to front load that based on lessons learned from the rest of the councils, I think.
Okay, sorry, I'm missing something. So you were able to do an LTP next year?
Yes, so we've done an enhanced annual plan this year, and then next year we'll do what is essentially a 9-year LTP.
Okay, all right. Yes, well, I'm sure we'll be happy to share what we've learned. Yeah, although you've got quite different issues too. out there?
We do.
Yeah. Okay. All right, councillors, that's enough from me. Any questions about the action plans? Jeff.
Thank you for upoko. I just want to reflect on point 31 of the Porirua action plan. That is page 30. And I guess it's just reflecting, obviously this affects both Wellington City and Porirua City, particularly around the existing Broken Hill site. And I know that officers are already aware of this this issue in terms of its priority order. So I would also ask for Wellington City just to be mindful of this in the context of their part of the jurisdiction as well. That the residents of Tawa who live on the periphery of the landfill are concerned about the long-term suitability of that location. I'm not here to advocate what that actually means for the existence of the current location, or where local residents are already advocating for a completely new location. But I think it's just important that in terms of the work of prioritisation in the both Wellington and Porirua local action plans, that they could give some time to that area. Kia ora.
Kia ora. That's a good point. Can I just clarify? So how will people, if a new site was to be found, how would that be done? Because people generally don't like to live near a landfill. It'll be hard to consent.
I shall only speak from a political position. I think that everybody is well aware that landfills are not a desirable thing that they like to have next door to where they live. And from a spatial planning perspective, Porirua does not have ideal locations that would fit that kind of space. Furthermore, landfills obviously aren't, while we will always have to have things that will need to be put in landfill because they cannot be processed into any other way. I think of the asbestoses of the world. It would be preferable from my point of view to not look at new locations. However, the people who live in Tawa have a very different viewpoint about that, and this will have to be something that officers will need to be mindful of in terms of the suitability of the Broken Hill site and in the broader context, which is what that review Action 31 is talking all about.
Yep, and we know it's difficult. Very, very difficult. I personally just rather have one landfill, some transfer stations, but that is a big conversation. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No? All right. Okay, so that means that we can now get on to debate. Is there anything that people would like to say further? So sorry, I should actually move the paper. And actually, Councillor Mitchell, will you second? Yep. Okay. So look, I think, sorry, I'll just make a very brief comment. Look, sorry, who's...
Just sorry, Chair. Yep. It's just a question on page 13, yep. And it's around paragraph 29, and it's about the regional data requirement.
Oh, yep.
I just want to make sure that the KPIs, when we get that report, at least the KPIs are consistent so that we're actually mapping, the same thing, that they haven't changed from each reporting of 2022-23, the questions are the same or the data is the same or reflected the same for 23-24 and 24-25. I'd hate to think that they've changed the KPIs, that we won't be able to draw similar or be able to use that data in a good way.
Fair enough. Dill?
Yes. we need to do work on establishing the baselines. So what will be presented to you will be consistent and not going back and forth with regards to data. And that's something that is in our best interest to look at how we divert the waste around in the region as well.
That okay, Helen? Yep, okay, good. All right, so just look, I just want to briefly speak. Look, your feedback, it's been a robust meeting, your feedback is taken on board, and there will be some further conversations between Councillor Mitchell, myself and officers just to make sure that we keep things on track and in line with your expectations. We all obviously want to make sure that this works really, really well. We've done heaps of work and I know that you want to deliver for your communities, so it's important that we keep this work on track and also that we work together regionally as well. I'm at a political level not in favour of lots of amalgamation, but I am very keen on working together collaboratively with other councils in the region for good outcomes. Councillor Mitchell, is there anything you'd like to say? No? Anyone else? No? Okay. And look, I'm getting you out of here before morning tea time. So, we will now put the motion. Those in favour? Quentin, I presume you're in favour? Oh, he doesn't get a vote. Sorry, that's the regional council. Sorry, of course he doesn't. I'm sorry, Councillor Duthie, you should be able to have a vote in an ideal world. Okay, right, so Kumana, those recommendations are passed. Thank you very much, colleagues, and Councillor Mitchell and I will make sure that you get some communication soon about the next steps so that we have a really good meeting in September, or get some good information in September. All right, have a wonderful day, and I'll hopefully give you plenty of time to do some other work.
Thanks, Chair.
And sorry, we've got to do, and
Yeah,
just to conclude the
written on there.
meeting, sorry, the karakia. So please say that with me. Unihia, 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 ku te uru tapanui, kia wātea, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, e te arataka tū, koe a rā e rongo, whakairea ake ki runga, kia wātea, ai rā, kua wātea. Thank you, team. Lovely to see you.